Welcome back to Random History. I am the navigator as we explore the little-known events and people that make history such an amazing subject. The events I delve into are probably not ones you learned about in school. These are the ones, when you do hear about them, you're likely to think they could not possibly be real. But they are. When I was a kid, my brothers would tell me that I was slower than molasses in January. I never thought much of it at the time, but after researching today's episode, I realized that under certain conditions, molasses can move rather quickly. In this episode, we'll hear about an unusual man-made disaster that, like most man-made disasters, could have been avoided if common sense and decency had only prevailed. We have seen countless industrial accidents caused by corporation cutting corners or allowing greed to get in the way of human decency. The Ford Pinto fiasco, the Bhopal explosion, the Triangle Shirtwaist fire, for example. The Great Molasses Flood is one more example where the greed of the factory owners led to the deaths of many innocent bystanders. In our True Heroes segment, we have my first audience request. I will tell you of the epic bravery of Desmond Doss. To say that his service in World War II was awe-inspiring does not even come close to doing him justice. In 2016, Andrew Garfield starred in a Hollywood production of Doss's life called Hacksaw Ridge. While the film garnered acclaim from critics and audiences alike, it did not give the complete picture of the man's incredible story. And so, Random History now presents the Great Molasses Flood of 1919 and the heroism of Desmond Doss. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919, also known as the Boston Molasses Disaster, is one of the most unusual and tragic industrial accidents in American history. This event, which occurred on 15 January 1919 in the North End neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts, led to the deaths of 21 people and injuries to over 150 others. The disaster unfolded when a large storage tank filled with 2.3 million gallons of molasses burst, sending a massive wave of the sticky substance through the streets at an estimated 35 miles an hour. To understand the Great Molasses Flood, it is essential to consider the historical and industrial context of the time. Molasses was a significant commodity in the early 20th century, particularly for its role in the production of industrial alcohol, which was used in munitions during World War I. The Purity Distilling Company, a subsidiary of United States Industrial Alcohol, or USIA, owned the massive storage tank that would eventually fail. The tank was constructed in 1915 at the height of the war to meet the growing demand for alcohol. From the beginning, the tank was fraught with issues. Reports indicate that the tank leaked from the very start, with residents frequently noticing molasses seeping from its seams. The company attempted to cover up these leaks by painting the tank brown to camouflage the molasses stains. However, these efforts did little to address the underlying structural weakness of the tank. The design and construction of the tank were rushed, with little regard for the safety standards that were common in that day. The engineer responsible for the tank's construction, Arthur Gell, had no formal training in engineering. Moreover, the tank was not properly tested before being put to use. These factors combined to create a disaster waiting to happen. On 15 January, temperatures in Boston had risen sharply following a period of cold weather. The temperature fluctuation may have contributed to the weakening of the tank, which was already under significant pressure due to the sheer volume of molasses it contained. At around 12:30 p.m., the tank gave way with a loud rumble, followed by a sound described by witnesses as resembling machine gun as the rivets popped out of the tank. The molasses wave, estimated to weigh about 13,000 tons, measured about 25 feet high and 160 feet wide. It surged through the streets, destroying everything in its path. Buildings were swept off their foundations. The elevated railway tracks of the Boston L were bent and twisted by the force of the flood. The sheer weight and viscosity of the molasses made it particularly deadly, as people and animals trapped in the wave found it nearly impossible to escape. The human toll was devastating. 21 people were killed and over 150 more injured, most crushed by debris or drowned in the molasses. Rescue efforts were hampered by the thick, sticky substance, which made it difficult for first responders to move through the area. The cleanup operation lasted for weeks, with crews using salt water from the harbor and sand to remove the molasses from the streets. In the aftermath of the disaster, public outrage was directed at the Purity Distilling Company and USIA. An investigation was launched to determine the cause of the tank's failure. The inquiry revealed a series of negligent actions on the part of the company. The most damning evidence was the inadequate design and construction of the tank. The investigation found that the tank's walls were too thin to support the weight of the molasses, and the rivets used in the construction were of very poor quality. Moreover, the company had failed to conduct proper safety inspections and ignored the warning signs of impending failure. The leaks in the tank, which had been evident for years, should have prompted the company to take corrective action. Instead, the company chose to conceal the leaks rather than address the structural issues. The investigation culminated in a landmark court case, one of the first class action lawsuits in the United States. The court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, finding USIA liable for the disaster due to their negligence. The company was ordered to pay $628,000 in damages. That equates to about $9 million today. This case set a precedent for corporate responsibility and the importance of adhering to safety standards in industrial operations. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919 is remembered not only for the tragic loss of life, but also for the impact it had on industrial safety rules. The disaster highlighted the danger of prioritizing profit over safety and the catastrophic consequences that can result from cutting corners in industrial practices. In the years following the disaster, stricter building codes and safety regulations were implemented to prevent similar incidents. Engineers and architects became more rigorously trained, and the importance of thorough testing and inspection became widely recognized. The event also left a lasting mark on the city of Boston. The area where the flood occurred, once a thriving neighborhood, was never fully rebuilt. The smell of molasses lingered in the area for decades, a haunting reminder of the disaster. Today, a small plaque at the entrance of Bhopal Park, near the site of the flood, commemorates the victims of the disaster. The Great Molasses Flood has also entered popular culture, often referenced as an example of a bizarre yet deadly catastrophe. The event has been the subject of books, documentaries, and even folk songs, ensuring that the memory of this unusual disaster lives on. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919 remains one of the most peculiar and tragic events in American history. The disaster was the result of a combination of corporate negligence, poor engineering, and unfortunate timing. While the flood itself was a freak accident, the lessons learned from it have had a lasting impact on industrial practices and safety regulations. The event serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of prioritizing safety and the human cost of neglecting it. I do not think that I will ever tell anyone ever again that they are slower than molasses. Our true hero for this episode was most certainly not slow. His quick thinking and ability to improvise not only saved his own life, but also the lives of countless soldiers that depended on him in battle. A few years ago, Hollywood released a movie about one of the most amazing feats of courage in military history. Unfortunately, like most movies about real-life events, the action on screen does not come close to the actual event itself. I hear one of the closest depictions to true intensity of battle was the first few minutes of the film Saving Private Ryan. Even that, however, pales in comparison to actual combat. Desmond Doss became one of the most celebrated heroes of World War II, earning the Medal of Honor for his extraordinary bravery during the Battle of Okinawa. His story is remarkable not only because of his actions, but because he accomplished them without ever carrying a weapon. You see, Desmond Doss was a conscientious objector. Doss's commitment to his religious beliefs, which included nonviolence and a strict observance of the Sabbath, set him apart from other soldiers in the U.S. Army. Despite skepticism and harassment from his fellow soldiers, Doss remained unwavering in his conviction to serve as a combat medic without compromising his principles. Doss was drafted in April of 1942 and assigned to an infantry unit in the 77th Infantry Division. From the beginning, he faced immense pressure from his fellow soldiers who viewed him as a liability due to his refusal to carry a weapon. Doss endured ridicule, physical abuse, and even attempts by his superiors to discharge him on psychiatric grounds. However, Doss remained steadfast in his determination to serve as a medic, believing that he could save lives even as others were taking them. Doss's moment of profound heroism came during the Battle of Okinawa in May of 1945. The battle was one of the bloodiest in the Pacific, and the U.S. forces faced fierce resistance from the entrenched Japanese troops. On 5 May, Doss's battalion was ordered to scale the 400-foot Media Escarpment, also known as Hacksaw Ridge. The ridge was heavily fortified, and the initial assault resulted in significant American casualties. As the soldiers were forced to retreat, Doss remained on the ridge, determined to rescue as many wounded men as possible. Over the course of several hours, Doss braved enemy fire, moving across the battlefield to locate injured soldiers. With no regard for his own safety, he treated their wounds and lowered them down the cliff to safety using a makeshift rope sling. Despite the constant threat of enemy fire, Doss managed to rescue 75 men during this harrowing night. His courage and resourcefulness were nothing short of extraordinary as he continued to risk his life to save others without firing a single shot. Doss's heroism at Hacksaw Ridge was not an isolated incident. Earlier in the war, he had demonstrated similar bravery during the battles on Guam and Leyte, where he was also credited with saving numerous lives under fire. However, it was his actions on Hacksaw Ridge that earned him the nation's highest military honor. President Harry S. Truman presented Doss with the Medal of Honor on 12 October 1945, making him the first conscientious objector to receive the award. In the citation, Doss was praised for his outstanding bravery and unflinching determination in the face of desperate, dangerous conditions. Desmond Doss's legacy extends beyond his Medal of Honor. His story is a testament to the power of faith, courage, and the belief that one person can make a profound difference in the lives of others, even in the most brutal circumstances. His life was immortalized in the 2016 film Hacksaw Ridge, which brought his incredible story to a new generation, although it did not nearly do justice in depicting his awe-inspiring courage. Doss's actions during World War II continue to inspire people around the world, not only for their bravery, but also for their embodiment of peace and humanity, even in the midst of war. His life serves as a powerful reminder, even in the darkest of times, that acts of selflessness and compassion can shine through. This brings us to the end of episode 5. I hope you enjoyed the program. As always, I enjoy researching and writing it. I hope you will continue listening to my future episodes, and you can always use the link in the podcast description to view the sources, the transcripts, and submit a request for stories you want to hear. Until next time, make some history of your own. Navigator out.